No one wants to find a body. Viewing a mangled corpse can fuck with your head as is, but when you once knew the now hollow shell, it's a unique kind of pain. You find yourself uttering a prayer to the Reaper, or God, or whomever is daring to take them away. A simple prayer. Not yet. Give us more time. I found myself trying to bargain for my sister. A sister I never gave the time of day. I didn't just want more time. I needed it. I needed to fix it. To fix us. Pinned between a car and a tree was Lucy Lou's limp body. Her skin was already beginning to change hues in a cold, evening air. The lights behind her eyes had already faded out. Now they were glassy, cold, and unmoving. Blood trickled from the folds of her lips, her body positioned like a rag doll. It was as if she were a discarded toy, forever propped against the tree she was abandoned against. Beside her, on the grass, laid a bloody page with a simple crayon drawing. On it, 2 figures were holding hands. One labeled me, the other Big Sister Sammy. What had I done? I couldn't bring myself to cry like Caroline. I couldn't bring myself to try to call for help like Dad. I just stood there, helpless, taking in the horrors before me. Then that subconscious plea began. I should have been careful what I wished for. I don't remember my mom. When she died, I was too young to understand what a mother even was, yet when Dad announced he was remarrying, it hurt. One would think I'd direct my anger at Caroline, the stepmother-to-be. Instead, my loathing always laid with the half-sister she created. I don't know why I hated Lucy Lou. Heck, did I even hate her? I think she was just an easier target. Giving Caroline a hard time meant being scolded by Dad. With Lucy Lou, however, she was too young to recognize I was giving her the cold shoulder, so she could never report my behavior. I never did anything that bad. I didn't actively pick on her or anything like that. I'd just ignore her. I'd ignore her stupid crayon drawings. I'd pretend not to hear her asking me to push her on the swing. I'd drown out her incessant "Are we there yet?" on every trip. I thought I'd grow out of it. When Lucy Lou was born, I was only 6. By the time I had definitively decided I didn't like her, I was 11. But even when I hit 16, nothing changed. It just became routine to go our separate ways. Her desperate begging to play together had long since stopped. I could tell she still wanted to spend time with me. Every time I was near her, she'd eagerly wait to see if I would glance her way. Once she'd realize her hopes were dashed, she'd deflate and go back to her drawings. It wasn't all bad. At family gatherings, she was more tolerable. Caroline always bragged about Lucy Lou's good manners. The praise always meant she'd try to impress. Acting like a maid, she'd serve everyone dinner and gather everyone's empty plates. Behind her mother's back, she'd even smuggle me some extra candy Grandpa had slipped her under the table. She was a good kid. But when I looked at Lucy Lou, I could see her mother's piercing blue eyes stare back at me. The fact they were Caroline's instead of my mother's was enough to make my skin crawl. Maybe if I wasn't such an asshole, I could have protected her, been a real big sister. Roughly a year ago, I was given a simple task. Every day after school, Lucy Lou would get off the school bus just outside our property. To get to our house, it required a long walk up a steep hill, so Caroline would be there to greet Lucy Lou each day, making sure she made it to the house in one piece. I never understood her paranoia. No one ever drove up that road. The only places it led was to our house and an old abandoned junkyard buried deep into the countryside. So, when Caroline asked me to be there in her place one morning, I protested. Caroline had to work overtime for some dumb conference, and Dad was never home until late into the evening. That left me to be Lucy Lou's escort. I eventually gave in. It was a headache, but so was arguing. At least I was used to ignoring Lucy Lou. Lucy's excitement at the news didn't help matters. I could tell she was trying to contain it, but her pestering questions while we got ready were a dead giveaway. Where will you be waiting? Will we be home alone for long? Will you help me with my homework? Can you draw with me after? I gave blunt answers to each. By the time she got to her last question, she realized the change in plans didn't signal a change in our dynamic. After all, why would it? Though, that last question did sting. Sammy, do you even like me? There wasn't any hope behind her voice, not a twinge of expectation. It was as if she'd already figured out the answer long ago. I hesitated. I wasn't expecting her to be so direct. My hesitation seemed to be the only response she needed as she left my bedroom without another word. That silence continued for the rest of the morning. I swallowed the guilt. I wasn't obligated to like her just because we shared half of the same blood, right? When my friends approached me at the end of the school day, asking to hang out, I was more than tempted. We tended to go to the junkyard a lot. We could smash things up consequence-free. Along with some other activities we wanted to keep out of our parents' sights. Originally, I planned to join them after I dropped Lucy Lou at home. Angela was quick to try to persuade me otherwise. Lucy Lou's elementary school was on the other side of town. Our house was the last stop on the bus route. The mix of traffic and all the prior stops meant she was usually back later than we were, and Angela had to be across town by 4 p.m. for some date she'd arranged. According to her, we hadn't spent time together in ages, and she didn't want to go without me. That then put pressure on me from the whole group because they wanted us both to come. It didn't take much to convince me. The junkyard was only a 15-minute walk down the road. If anything was wrong, I wouldn't be far away. Not that anything could go wrong anyway. It was an empty road. I sent Lucy Lou a text. She didn't have a mobile, just a crappy flip phone for emergencies. I let her know where I'd be. I never got a response, but I could see she read my text. We always had a lot of fun at that junkyard, smashing already dismembered cars and hiking up the piles of metal. Sometimes we chucked things at particularly unstable piles to see if we could get the whole thing to tumble. We had some half-successes, but never managed the full thing. This time we were determined, though. We said we weren't leaving till we did some real damage, which meant we lost track of time, until Caroline called me. It was at 6:47 p.m. I remember that to this day. Angela had already left with a couple of the others, and I had just finished watching Simon chug a bottle of Budweiser in one go. I told everyone to hush while I picked up. If Lucy Lou had tattled on me, I had an excuse prepared. "Hey, Caroline. What? Is Lucy Lou still with you?" There was a dormant panic behind her voice. "No. Why?" I was cautious with my words, not wanting to give the truth away just yet. "Then where is she? She isn't home." The following silence gave myself away. Caroline's voice became more demanding. "You walked her home, didn't you?" I looked to my friends, who had picked up the conversation that wasn't going well. They shrugged at me. "No, I didn't." I could hear a slight gasp on the other side of the phone, not from a realization, but from a confirmation of her fears. "She couldn't have gone far, Caroline. I told her to call me if get home. Now, we need to look for her." Before she hung up, I could hear my dad entering the house in the background. The last thing that came through the speakers were Caroline's sobs. I left, feeling a bit guilty for causing a panic. Lucy Lou was annoying, but not stupid. She'd be walking around the area somewhere. With how she always doodled her surroundings, she was probably wandering down the road, chasing a butterfly or something. It had only been a couple of hours, anyway. The bus would have arrived around 3:30. Angela may have spotted her on the way out. We could ask her what direction Lucy went. Lucy Lou would be fine. They are worried for no reason. The lies I told myself were torn apart when I heard Caroline's distant screams. It was a horrible cacophony of wails mixed with shrieks. Words may have been attached to each sound, but they were incoherent behind her tears. I ran to the source. What would have been a 5-minute walk became a 30-second sprint. That's when I saw it. Lucy Lou's head was barely visible over the bonnet of the car. The vehicle was so big compared to her tiny body. Its engine was still running. Whoever owned it left in a hurry. The car was ancient, rusting in areas, and a model I didn't recognize. I couldn't think about it too in depth. My thoughts were all consumed by Caroline's broken words to a God that did not care. My baby, give her back," she kept repeating. I don't remember when, but I collapsed to my knees. Everything hurt, but I didn't know how to scream. I just wanted another chance. One more chance to make things right. She was just a kid. Why was I so cruel to her? Why? She sat all day in school, fantasizing about spending time with me, and this is the fate I left her to? Were her last thoughts of me? How I had abandoned her? How I hated her? But I didn't. No, I didn't. I never did. I was just mad. I don't know what at. I was just mad, and she was just there, and now she was gone, and it was my fault. Please, someone, just give me time. Give me time to fix this. Please. That's when movement caught my eye. Despite her chest being hidden behind the car, it appeared to move. I couldn't tell for sure if I was going mad. Then I saw a small cloud of condensation leaving Lucy Lou's mouth. Holy shit. Holy shit, Dad, she's breathing. Tell the paramedics she's breathing. I scrambled to her side. Her eyes were still open, but she didn't seem to be awake. But now that I was closer, I could see her tiny inhales and exhales. Not sure what else to do, I held her hand in mine. I told her everything was going to be okay, and I was there. I was with her this time. I promised I'd be better, promised I'd draw with her, promised I'd do whatever she wanted. Anything to make her smile. I wouldn't abandon her again. The doctor said it was a miracle. The way the car was positioned kept most of Lucy Lou's blood inside her. Even her organs had somehow stayed compacted together, preventing any major internal bleeding. For someone her size, she should have died on impact, but according to one nurse, she just got lucky. The same couldn't be said for her spine. Lucy Lou may have lived, but she'd never walk again. The police asked me, and my friends, a lot of questions. According to Angela, she saw Lucy Lou get off her bus as normal before walking up the hill. The car, however, somehow eluded to her, despite her walking down the only road it could have come from. It had no license plate, no DNA anywhere inside, and no handy ID laying anywhere in the vehicle. Only the keys remained, still in the ignition. They never found the owner. I didn't care much for a witch hunt anyway. All I wanted whoever it was in prison, the only monster I could blame was myself. I left Lucy Lou alone. If I had walked her home, she'd never have been in danger in the first place. I think Caroline shared the same sentiment. I'd catch her glaring at me any time I talked to or about Lucy. Whatever comments she had were kept to herself. If Lucy Lou hadn't pulled through the surgery, I think our family would have been shattered. Especially poor Dad. He already lost a wife. The death of his daughter would have eaten him alive. An act of God, that's what Caroline would always say. God doesn't answer such prayers. For him, death is final and inescapable. The devil loved accepting the requests God never granted. When Lucy Lou first woke up, I couldn't bring myself to face her. In the past, it was because I didn't want to see her. Now, it's all I wanted to do, but I was too much of a coward. It wasn't until she ushered me into her hospital room that I finally spoke to her. Caroline and Dad had stepped away to talk to the doctor. I was nervous when Lucy Lou called me over, but my anxiety vanished when she presented me with her little project. I drew one for you before, but I lost it in the accident. But I made an even better one, she announced, handing me a new crayon creation. On the page was one of her signature drawings. She was getting quite good at them. Despite only being one step above stick figures, I could tell each figure was Dad, Caroline, and me. We had wings and were floating in the sky around another small drawing. Why do we have wings? Because you guys are my angels. You saved me. Her words were accompanied by a big smile. So, this other drawing is you? I wish I could say her artistic skills resulted in a tear-jerking masterpiece, but I was just confused. What was apparently Lucy Lou didn't look like her at all. It was just a weird scribbled red and blue blob. After she confirmed it was her, I felt the need to inquire further. Why do you look like that? Because I died. The comment hurt. It was stated so casually, as if that aspect was as self-explanatory as the rest. But Lucy Lou, you lived. This time I didn't get a response, just that big grin. My first thought was to hand the drawing to the doctor. It was clear she wasn't processing everything well, but when I saw her big eyes staring at me, anticipating what I'd do with her gift, I decided I could mention it in passing without needing to give the page up. I folded it up and put it in my pocket. That's where I'd keep it for the rest of my days. I'll keep this with me from now on. It'll be a good luck charm. My decision made her giddy. She leaned in to hug me. I was a bit taken aback, and without realizing, my eyes began to water. I held her close and said, I'll be better this time. I'll change, I promise. I think she was confused at my words, but she continued to hug me anyway. Lucy Lou was stuck in that bed for a while. It took months before she was ready to leave the hospital. The accident had occurred at the beginning of the fall, and yet she still remained in that hospital room all the way through winter. I felt bad seeing her cooped up inside. I'd come to draw with her after school to keep her company, but I felt she could use some fresh air. I managed to convince her doctor and Caroline it'd be safe to bring her to the playground outside. For younger patients, they had a couple slides and swing sets beside the hospital. I thought pushing her on the swing for a while would do no harm. From now on, Lucy Lou wouldn't be able to swing by herself, so it'd be my job to help her. When we got to the swing set, she said she was determined to loop around the top. I agreed to help her in her endeavors and push as hard as I could. We both knew she'd never make it high enough, but hearing her laugh felt good. I wish I had tried to do this sooner. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a figure in the hospital window across the road. Caroline. Even from where I stood, I could feel her conflicted feelings. I knew she wasn't fond of me. I don't know if she ever was, but now I was a constant reminder of how she almost lost her daughter, and how I couldn't be trusted. The emotion she settled on must have been relief as she walked away. For the moment, her daughter was happy. That's all she needed. In the time I had stopped to watch Caroline, I had forgotten to keep pushing Lucy Lou. When I looked back down, Lucy Lou was chewing on the metal chains. Lucy Lou, what are you doing? It tastes nice. I wasn't sure how to react. She was too old to be acting like this. Not sure what else to say. I just smiled. You shouldn't. Don't you know your tongue can freeze to metal when it's cold? She looked me up and down, trying to decipher my lie. Don't worry, Sammy. I'll stop. It won't keep me warm anyway. Kids say strange things sometimes, but I wasn't sure what to make of Lucy Lou's comments. I just asked if she was cold and wanted to go back inside. With a simple nod, she raised up her arms for me to carry her back to her wheelchair. Lucy Lou complained about being cold a lot. Even when we got back home, she'd often ask for us to start the fire. No matter if it was lit or unlit, it'd never be enough. That's when she began a strange habit. One night, I had gotten out of bed to use the ladies' room. It was a night like any other, but when I saw Lucy Lou's bedroom door slightly cracked open, I felt the urge to look inside. To my dismay, she was gone. Panic set in. Where could she have gone? Her wheelchair was still folded by her bed. My first thought was to go to our parents. If she wasn't with them, then something bad must have happened. That was the plan, until I peered outside her bedroom window. Dad's car was in the driveway. There was movement inside. Lucy Lou. I put on my slippers and stepped outside. I was still considering waking Caroline or Dad, but I wanted to question Lucy Lou myself. Lo and behold, when I opened the car door, there was Lucy Lou, fast asleep. How'd she get here? Did she drag herself all the way out? I could see from the scuff marks on her knees. She had done just that. My sudden interruption of her slumber prompted an exaggerated yawn from her. When she saw me, she looked confused, not surprised, just confused, as if she didn't understand why I came out to find her. Why are you out here? I whispered, being careful not to make too much noise. She shrugged. It's warm. What is? The car. It was freezing outside. The car didn't retain much heat without the engine running either. How could she possibly be warm? The doctor had warned, after accidents, patients often experienced trauma responses. She didn't want to speculate, but from her experience that usually meant avoiding scenes similar to the incident. So, we suspected she'd be at least a little nervous around cars. Yet here she was. You'll freeze out here, Lucy. Come back inside. But it's warm. I tried to think of what to do. Maybe Caroline could coax her back indoors. I could also drag her in, kicking and screaming, but that was less than ideal. I thought this was maybe her way of coping. With a still half-asleep sigh, I told her I'd be back before returning with a large blanket. What are you doing, Sammy? I'm not leaving you out here by yourself. You take the blanket, I'll sleep in the front seat. No, stay back here, with me. I went to argue, but then I saw her staring up at me with anticipation. Maybe she didn't like being alone out there. I relented and gave her a smile. Sure, Lucy, just scooch over. Lucy Lou slid to the far side of the seats, and I climbed in with the blanket, making sure it covered her more than it did me. We laid so our feet were beside each other's heads. It was a struggle to find comfortable position for us both, but after some careful navigation we managed. I regretted not bringing a pillow. I was definitely going to get a bad creak in my neck the next morning. It was worth it, though, to know Lucy Lou was safe. It's strange. In the past, I would have left her in the car by herself without a second thought. Now the mere idea made me anxious. I felt Lucy Lou's arms wrap around my legs and pull me in tight. "You all right?" I glanced down and tried to get a look at her. "You're warm." Her bright blue eyes shot through the dark, the only color in the shadows that engulfed us. I reached down to stroke her head. "Good night, Lucy Lou." To my surprise, it was a peaceful night's sleep. It could have been the exhaustion of the past few months finally catching up to me, but I was happy. I felt well rested the next day. That peace was swiftly interrupted by an upset Caroline. Caroline scolded us for doing something so stupid. We had overslept, so she woke up well before us and started to freak out. That was until she ran outside to search for us and saw us tucked away in the back seat. Dad was moments away from calling the police again. When I explained what had happened, she called me an idiot. Rightfully so, sleeping outside on a cold winter night was not a great plan. But my sister needed me, so her pleas mattered more to me than Caroline's complaints. We made sure not to be caught in the future. It wasn't every night, but often Lucy Lou would ask me before bed if I could sneak out again. I always obliged. Sometimes before we fell asleep, we'd grab some flashlights and make a makeshift blanket fort in the back seats. Even though it was hard to draw on top of the leather cushions, Lucy Lou would doodle away as I'd hand her whichever crayon she demanded of me. At the time, they were some of my happiest memories. I remember being so disappointed when I couldn't find the batteries for the flashlight. While Lucy Lou would continue to complain about the cold and insist on her nightly escapades, she'd acted like a normal kid. I thought she'd struggle knowing she'd never walk again. Anytime I asked her, though, she said she was content having me push her around. While some adjustments had to be made for her life, she was a good sport about it all. For the first couple of months of her being home, there were no obvious signs. That was until she returned to school. We had considered waiting until the next school year before we sent her back. Caroline felt it would be easier to hold her back a year than force her to catch up on all the work she missed. Lucy Lou begged and pleaded to go. Apparently she missed her friends and was growing bored of the few locations she got to see day to day. So she went back. Again, at first her teachers said she was doing well. Despite missing a lot, she kept up with the other kids and she seemed to be enjoying herself. That was until her teacher came to me in a panic. Dad had been picking up Lucy Lou from school after work, but on this occasion he couldn't make it, so he asked me to go in his place. That meant I got to leave class a bit early to make it across town. I felt a little awkward having to take the bus with a bunch of elementary school kids, but I agreed without hesitation anyway. I wouldn't make the same mistake twice. When I arrived, however, her teacher, Miss Gracie, was also waiting for me. "Are you here for Lucy?" The anxiety in her voice was seeping out with every word. Yeah, I'm Sammy, her sister." Her pensive eyes scanned me up and down as if she was trying to will me into being my parents instead of a dumb teenager. In a bit of a rush, she pulled me aside. "I think you need to bring her to a hospital." Lucy Lou sat in her wheelchair, doodling away as always. She looked fine to me. "Why, what's the matter?" Miss Gracie tried to start her sentence a few times. I could see her trying to process her explanation in real time. I think she knew what she was about to say was bizarre. We were doing a little science experiment with circuits at the end of the school day. I asked all the kids to tidy up before the final bell, but some of Lucy Lou's equipment went missing. My confusion was visible as my eyebrow raised to the sky. I didn't understand where she was going with this. She continued, "The batteries went missing." So I asked Lucy Lou if she knew where they went, and she said she did. When I asked her where they went, she said she ate them. I was too baffled to respond. I think she continued on, apologizing for not noticing and how the school nurse had left that day early. At first she thought the kids just say weird shit sometimes, but then her lab buddy said they saw her do it. Not sure what else to do, I just thanked Miss Gracie for letting me know and called my dad. He had the same reaction I did. Eating batteries? If she was younger, maybe, but this just had to be some weird miscommunication. Kids just say a lot of things sometimes. There's no way she'd just do something so strange. Yet, when we all asked her directly, she repeated what she said to Miss Gracie. It was as if she didn't understand what we were so worked up about. We decided it'd be safer to go to the hospital. It might have just been a weird attempt at attention-seeking, but it wasn't worth the risk of not finding out. Of course, there was nothing out of the ordinary in her stomach. The scans came up normal, not a battery in sight. The relief was replaced with an unnerving feeling. Why would she lie? The doctor just recommended we schedule her in for some therapy sessions. Perhaps this was her new way of coping, telling strange lies to make people worry about her. Lucy Liu appeared unbothered by it all. If she was caught in a lie or being falsely accused, either way she didn't seem to care. We chose not to think much of it. Dad thought he'd instead book us a nice holiday away. He was thinking maybe Disneyland would be nice in the summer. It was his way of trying to let her know we cared about her. Until then, we could only hope she'd open up to us more. But then it kept happening. Panicked phone calls from Miss Gracie, random appliances and devices no longer working at home, smoke detectors not going off when Dad burned breakfast. Every time the same thing was missing. The batteries. At the same time, Lucy Liu would always admit she was the culprit. Yet again and again, the scans would show her stomach was empty. Therapy didn't seem to help. Neither did our attempts to reach out to her. You wouldn't know anything was wrong looking at her. Life went on as usual in her world. It started smaller. Coin cells, then A27s, then AAs, AAAs, AAs, D cells, phone batteries, remote batteries, old toy batteries. It never ended. Not sure what else to do, we started locking them out of sight. At first we had hid them in places she couldn't reach, but somehow they'd still end up missing. When we locked all of them up, Dad's office computer was just torn to pieces instead. Lucy Liu's behavior, while for the most part it was the same, there'd be these odd episodes of apathy, particularly when we tried to pull her away from the fire. It was like she wasn't there anymore. Glued to the sight of flames, she'd watch them dance for hours on end. When we tried to lure her away, it was like talking to a wall. She was always cold, even in the coming summer heat. On one occasion, she was so mesmerized by the fire she almost stuck her hand inside. I managed to pull her back just in time. I convinced Dad and Caroline to get her an electric heater after that. We would still sleep in the car most nights. I worried I was indulging her too much. Maybe I was making her symptoms worse. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night just to see her staring back at me. No matter how we laid, she'd always cling to me tight. I'd ask her how she was, and she would always respond, "I am happy with you." The longer this continued, however, the less convinced I was by her answer. "Lucy, I think we should stop sleeping in the car." "But I like it. It's warm here." I avoided looking at her. I hated it when she was upset with me. "I know, but you're obviously not okay, Lucy. I don't think this is a good idea anymore." When I glanced her way, I expected to see a look of disappointment, maybe some frustration or desperation. Instead, there was a flash of anger. Then as quickly as it came, it was gone. "All right, Sammy, I don't want to worry you. It's my job to be worried." I tried my best to give her a little smile, but that look she gave me, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I had never seen her angry, ever. The odd tantrum when she was little, but never genuine rage. I didn't know a child could make an expression like that. We stopped sleeping in the car. I made sure to let Dad know what we had been up to. In turn, he made sure to remind me I was an idiot, but he appreciated I was trying to help and said he'd pass the information on to the therapist. I could tell he wasn't doing well. My dad had always been a simple man, as plain as they come, kind and gentle, but stern when he needed to be, a more than capable father, always ready to give his girls the world. Despite his simple nature, he always shone so brightly. Now that light was dim. Lucy Liu's recent attitude had started to chip away at Caroline. When the stress wasn't vocalized, it would instead be visible in her mannerisms. Caroline could be a bit uptight, a no-nonsense type of woman, but she'd always unwind when she spent time with her daughter. Now instead, she'd pick away at the arm of the couch in the living room, tearing it apart in a daze. She'd taken time off work to be with Lucy Liu, but that only made her anxiety grow. I remember always seeing them laughing together at the dumb shows they'd find on TV. I remember them playing dress-up when Lucy Liu was too small for the outfits they'd throw together. They always seemed to share this unspoken understanding. There wasn't anything in particular they did to show that bond, but I could just tell by how in sync they always were. There was a time I envied that bond. Now I miss it. Their joyful banter was replaced by an empty coldness. They'd sit in the same room, barely exchanging a word. Lucy Lou didn't seem to notice the change. Caroline was broken. You could tell with how she'd stare blankly out the kitchen window. It was as if Caroline couldn't recognize her own daughter anymore. Dad could feel the family fracturing, powerless to stop it. I tried my best to take the weight off his shoulders, but I wasn't sure what to do. Dad's bond with Lucy Lou had also weakened. Before, it was like Lucy and me were his life sources. Yet here we were, draining it away instead. He continued his dumb dad jokes and tried to make us laugh. But even when Lucy Lou reacted how he wanted, I could tell he didn't believe it for some reason. Perhaps he could see something I couldn't. After dozens of trips to the hospital, it was clear they were sick of us. In a rather condescending manner, they told Caroline to return when there was a real problem. Until then, she'd be better with a child psychologist. It definitely got under her skin. Before we even left the parking lot, her and Dad started arguing outside the car. Me and Lucy Lou sat inside, pretending not to hear. I couldn't tell if Caroline was boiling over with rage or on the verge of tears. Maybe both. Lucy Lou just sat there, not moving. "Lucy, why do you keep lying?" "I'm not. I did eat them." I don't know why, but I believed her. So I asked a simple question. "Why?" Turning to me, she beamed a big smile. "They keep me warm." I could still hear Caroline breaking down outside the car. Rather than continue to scream, she opted to break down in tears. I couldn't gauge Dad's reaction. Lucy Lou just stared ahead, waiting to get going. I didn't know what to do with myself, so I just pulled Lucy close to me and hugged her tight. I don't think she understood what was happening, but she embraced me. As we held each other, I couldn't help but notice her skin on mine. It was cold, cold as the day she died. The pattern continued. Locking batteries away helped, but we couldn't hide everything. Guilt consumed me. Witnessing the fracturing of my once cheerful family was tearing me apart inside. I could have prevented this. This was my fault. Lucy Lou was hurt because of me. I caused all of this, but I didn't know how to fix it. Caroline didn't have the energy to resent me anymore. That just made me feel worse. Sometimes I debated falling on my knees and begging for her forgiveness. I knew it was something she never gave me, but it felt wrong watching her hatred turn to apathy. I'd rather she hate me than I'd know she was still feeling something. If I could figure out what was wrong, I could fix all of this. Maybe if I could find where Lucy Lou was putting all the batteries, that would help. No matter where I looked, I could never find them. If I asked Lucy, she'd just give me the usual answer. I could see Dad had the same idea. On a few occasions, I found him digging up the garden. When I'd ask what he was up to, he'd claim he was tidying things up a bit. Creating holes across your garden doesn't tend to have a tidy look. I knew what he was doing, though. I'd see him watch Lucy Lou's movements when she went out on the grass. Every spot she'd stop to take in the scenery, he'd tear apart the next day. Eventually, he gave up. From the beginning of his searches, I think he knew he'd never find anything. The more hope he lost, the less he checked in on Lucy. Knowing she'd never give an honest answer made it pointless asking in the first place. She used to tell Dad everything. It came to a head one night when I heard screeching outside my window. Once again, Lucy Lou had somehow managed to make it to the car, even after we hid the keys. Caroline found her first, and had decided to try to drag her out. It should have been easy. Lucy was small and could only move the upper half of her body, but she was putting up a hell of a fight. I watched as she pushed against Caroline's face, digging her nails into her skin, trying to escape her tight grasp. It was like watching an animal thrashing about. Dad also heard the commotion. I could hear him scrambling out of his bedroom. With how fast he was moving, I'm surprised he didn't take a shortcut and jump out the window. I followed. Caroline and Lucy were shouting so loud I could hear what they were saying before we even reached the front door. "Come back inside," Caroline kept repeating as Lucy just said no, again and again. "Inside, now." The demand sounded final this time. Caroline had run out of patience a long time ago. When we threw open the door to run outside, I could see Lucy lean in to whisper something in Caroline's ear. I could see the moment Caroline's heart dropped. White as a sheet, for a moment she just stopped, until rage consumed her. "Who are you? Where is my daughter? Tell me where she is." Violently she shook Lucy, ignoring my dad as he begged her to stop. Lucy's cries were dry but chilling. It sounded like a survival instinct more than an emotion. I've heard prey animals call for their parents in similar ways before they were about to be torn apart. Dad barely managed to pull Caroline away, leaving Lucy to fall to the dirt. Caroline just kept demanding answers as Dad held her back. Never once had I seen her blow up like that. I didn't have time to question it. My focus remained on Lucy. I took her in my arms and carried her inside as fast as my feet could manage. I ran to the bathroom and locked the door behind us. As the adrenaline wore off and my breathing became heavier, I slid my back down against the door. I cradled Lucy, refusing to let her go despite her looking unfazed. In what must have been an attempt to calm me down, she patted my head. I stared at her as she just smiled back at me. "Don't worry, Sammy, I'm okay." I knew she couldn't be. How could she be? She hadn't been okay for a while now. Why was she acting so weird? I know the accident was going to cause problems, but I didn't just get it. And why wouldn't she tell me what was wrong? I expected her smile to fade, but she just sat there. I could have just continued to sit like that until it was safe to leave, but curiosity tempted me. "Lucy, what did you say to your mom?" Her expression remained the same, not even a twitch in reaction to my question. Still looking me in the eye, she answered, "I asked her if she was going to kill me like she did our siblings." "What? What siblings?" Still not even a wrinkle in the movement of her face. "We never got to meet them." At first, I didn't understand what she could be implying. That's when I remembered something from before Lucy was born. Dad and Caroline had been married for a number of years before they had Lucy. I thought nothing of it at the time, but in retrospect, it was strange they waited so long to have a kid of their own. Except now, it dawned on me. Before Caroline was pregnant with Lucy, my parents were somber. I remember Caroline had to go to the hospital a lot, and I never knew why. There was one time when Caroline locked herself in the bathroom and told me to go get Dad. I remember crying because she shouted at me unexpectedly. After they left for another hospital trip, Caroline started praying a lot in those years. It all meant nothing to me as a child, but now. Was Lucy their first attempt? Lucy sat there, waiting for my next question. How did you know that?" "Nothing. Still nothing. Just the same damn smile and piercing blue eyes in the dark." Before I could even ask anything else, there was a gentle knock on the door. Dad assured me it was safe to come out. Caroline left to go cool off at our grandpa's house. I opened the door, expecting him to be all over Lucy Lou, but he only briefly asked if she was all right, as if it were only out of obligation. After we brought her back to her bed, he seemed more concerned about me, asking if I was okay, or if anything happened, or if I was rattled by the situation. I answered honestly that I was fine, but a bit freaked out, but I'd manage. He offered to sleep on the armchair in my bedroom, something he'd do when I was little and had nightmares. I tried my best to insist I was fine and that Lucy probably needed his company more than I did. When he didn't respond, a realization hit me. He didn't agree with Caroline, did he? "Dad, good night, Sam." He left without another word. The days grew longer after that incident. The sense of dread in the house kept growing. Caroline avoided Lucy. Dad tried his best to interact with her, but I could tell it was forced. I couldn't understand what was happening. Only I seemed to care about my little sister. Only I seemed to be giving her the time of day. The way our roles had switched left me uneasy. Over time, Lucy's skin began to grow pale, with an almost blue tint. Still she complained about the cold no matter how many heaters and blankets I brought her. I could swear her eyes were brighter. They'd reflect in the night like a cat's, her unkempt hair making her look even more feral. Items continued to disappear. The nightly car routine also restarted. I didn't want to leave her alone, so I returned to sleeping in there with her. My dad didn't stop us, but he tried his best to sway me otherwise. Then one day the car engine stopped working. Dad had to phone in late to work when we discovered the battery was gone. Before we could get it replaced, Caroline found her car wouldn't start the next day either. Soon the fuse box went, along with the oil tank being drained. Then the birds. Dead birds, everywhere. In the garden, her room, the kitchen, all drained of their life source like everything else. Blood. The culprit was willing to give herself up, as always. I begged Lucy to tell me what was wrong. I burst into tears on multiple occasions. She could tell me anything I'd assured her again and again. She'd always say nothing was wrong. She's just cold. Another night came where I found her bed empty, so I ventured outside to join her. Yet the cars were empty too. I bolted back inside, frantic to figure out where she went. Instead, I found my parents sitting in the kitchen. Dad was leaning against the countertop, while Caroline sat beside it, her hand rubbing her forehead. "Where's Lucy?" "Gone. She left." Caroline kept her head down, refusing to face me. "Gone? Gone where? Her wheelchair is still here." Neither of them answered, as if I should be able to guess myself. I could feel myself getting agitated. "She couldn't have crawled away." "I doubt she crawled." Caroline was the only one to answer, but Dad never disagreed. "We have to go after her. A priest is coming by tomorrow." A mixture of confusion and disgust washed over me. "A priest? She's sick. She needs help, not a priest." Caroline chuckled a little. "Of course you wouldn't understand. That's not her. What the hell are you saying? Who else would it be? Have you both gone mad?" "Sam, she's changed," Dad finally chimed in. "She almost died. Of course she changed. What did you think, she'd come back all fixed as good as new?" Instead of responding, Dad emptied a cardboard box onto the counter that had been sitting beside him. Dozens and dozens of items, all broken or missing batteries. It was as if there was a graveyard of electronics spread across the marble top. "This isn't normal, Sam. My little girl, would never act like that. At night she sometimes I find her staring at me from the foot of my bed, smiling. I could see the whites of my father's eyes as he spoke, like he was recounting the horrors of war. She needs help, but we've tried, professionals. We've switched her therapist so many times, but I don't know what happened to the real Lucy, but that's not her." I could see his eyes go glossy as he teared up. Caroline was more apathetic as she spoke. "I don't know what that thing is, but it took my daughter. If it never returns, so be it." You're both crazy. She's out there alone right now. She needs our help. Are you just abandoning? You don't get to lecture me about my kid when you left her to die in the first place." Caroline smacked the counter so hard I could hear her knuckles crack. It was an anger I always knew was there, simmering. What hurt more was when my own father didn't come to my defense, or Lucy's. I stood there like an idiot, not knowing what to say, with no defense for myself. "You're right. It's my fault, which is why I don't leave her alone again." I pivoted to run out the door before either of them could stop me. I could hear Dad shouting for me to stop, but I blocked him out and just focused on making it out. Once outside, I ran barefoot, ignoring the pains of the stones beneath my feet. I kept running and running, not realizing my dad's begging had already faded out behind me. I couldn't be sure where Lucy went. I had a good hunch, though. I wouldn't leave her. Something was wrong, I knew that. I didn't know if it was psychological or physical or something. All I knew was she needed my help. That's all I needed to know. By the time I made it to the junkyard, my feet were bleeding. When I passed the scene of the incident that started this all, it didn't even process in my mind. I was too focused on my destination. I called out for Lucy Lou. I tried my best to tempt her out, praying she was there to hear my requests. I searched everywhere I could. No car went unchecked, no scrap metal unturned. Every time I found nothing, a little bit of me died inside. If she wasn't here, I wouldn't have any other ideas. It would mean I lost her for good this time. I couldn't. Losing her would mean I failed, that I never made up for my mistakes. I don't think I could bear that. Yet my desires meant nothing. If she was gone, she was gone. I was ready to give into despair when I heard metal clacking from behind. I whipped around, desperate to find the source. When I looked up, I saw her silhouetted on top of one of the piles of metallic husks. The only feature I could make out were her eyes, almost turquoise and dilated. They were focusing on me, shining on top of the opaque shadows surrounding them. The way she was postured looked unnatural, almost on all fours as she crouched over the innards of one of the cars, still clutched in her now spindly hands. I told myself it must be a trick of the light. Her once delicate hands were more adjacent to claws, each knuckle bone pierced through the skin. It was like looking at a malnourished child, as if she were only skin and bone with hollow insides. Her spine was raw, her shirt partly ripped to reveal it poking out of her skin, as if attempting to claw its way out. The details were obscured in the darkness. The stillness somehow made it harder to tell if my mind was betraying me. Yet it felt like I was looking death in the eyes. I swallowed. I could not let fear get in the way. "Lucy Lou, can we please go home?" As if on cue, one by one she clambered down each vehicle. The way she moved was unnatural, as if each step was calculated yet sporadic at the same time. I could hear her spine pop with each movement. I was scared of what I'd see once she was lit by the moonlight. But when she was finally visible again, she looked just like my Lucy Lou. Face smothered in oil. She wiped it as it dropped down her chin. The smile she always wore had disappeared, replaced by a cold stare. "You want me to come home?" I just nodded. I waited for her to ask more. Those questions never came, so I persevered. "Please, Lucy, let me help you." Lucy Lou took in the junkyard around her, spinning to survey her surroundings. Once finished, she gave a gentle smile. "Okay, Sammy." I felt a wave of relief. I held out my hand for her to take. At first she didn't seem to understand, then took it on her own. The whole way home we walked in silence. I wasn't sure what to say, hoping she'd begin the conversation first. By the time we returned home, Dad and Caroline were already in their room. I'm sure Dad was comforted, knowing I had returned. He just wouldn't want to see what with. "Lucy, want to sleep in my room tonight?" With a look of glee, she nodded. I gathered her blankets and pushed her mattress into my room. To the best of my abilities, I threw together a blanket fort in the corner. That night I couldn't bring myself to join her, though. I offered her my own bed, but she said she liked the mattress better. I tried my best to give her a smile before saying goodnight. With how quickly that smile faltered, I'm sure she knew it was forced. I then set a torch beside her, batteries still inside. She looked at me surprised. "Lucy, I'm here if you need me. Remember that." I expected her usual facade, but instead she lay down to sleep. I crawled into my own bed, not even bothering to pull my blanket up. I just laid on my back, staring at my ceiling. I could feel a sharp pain shoot through my foot. My injuries from running had caught up to me. I couldn't ignore the pain, but I had no will to find a solution. I don't know how a priest would fix Lucy Lou. Maybe my parents were right. While she may have appeared to be herself once visible, I knew what I saw. I knew she was still in there, though. They thought Lucy was gone, but they hadn't seen those glimpses of her I did. How she'd hold me in the back of the car, how she'd tell me stories about her friends at school, how she'd light up when doodling. I knew she was in there. I looked down at my feet, expecting to see the blood smearing across my bedsheets. Instead, I saw Lucy's eyes peering over the bed frame. It was as if they were staring into my soul, unmoving, unblinking. That unbroken focus, as she stared at me, sent a chill up my spine. It was like watching a predator sizing up its prey, debating if it should swallow it whole or take its time. I could feel my heart in my throat. I didn't know what to say. Then I noticed the blood on my bedsheets was all over her hands. "What are you doing?" I could still only see her eyes. "It's warm." We remained at a standstill. I could feel my heart beating faster. My mind raced with all the ideas Caroline and Dad had put into my head. I took a deep breath, relaxing as I remembered who I was looking at. "Sleep well, Lucy Lou." The standoff ended as I turned to my side. Despite my moment of courage, I didn't unwind until I heard her walk back to her mattress. "Night, Sammy. Love you." It was the first time she ever said those words to me. Despite the situation, I couldn't contain my little smile. "Love you too, Lucy." I don't know how, but I managed to fall asleep. Adrenaline and fear had still been pumping through my veins all the way until I closed my eyes and drifted off. Somehow I knew, even if Dad and Caroline were right, Lucy wouldn't hurt me. Even if that wasn't the real Lucy, I could tell a piece of her was still in there. Why else would she remind me she loved me? That night remained unpeaceful as I awoke again. I heard some slight muffled sounds, followed by something smashing. I was still half asleep, so it took a while before I realized what I heard. What caught my attention was my dad's agonizing scream. I shot up in my bed. To my horror, Lucy Lou wasn't on her mattress. No, she wouldn't. She wouldn't. No, she wouldn't. I kept repeating it to myself as I dashed down the hallway. I slipped on the carpet, struggling to stay upright, going too fast and almost missing their bedroom door. My hand hovered over the door handle. Dread took over me as I trembled in place. I resolved myself to continue, swinging open the door. I just stood there, watching the same scene play out before me all over again. No one wants to see a corpse, especially the mangled one of someone you love, especially when it's your fault. And this time you knew, whatever being you had been bargaining with just enjoyed toying with you. The once cream bedroom was now painted red. Detailed patterns on the wall were now smothered in a crimson pulp, making them unrecognizable. The family portrait Dad kept by his bedside drawer was in pieces on the ground. Caroline's head was twisted up to the ceiling, so far back her neck snapped. A slash was across it, exposing her trachea. Her eyes were shut over, suggesting a peaceful slumber before her life was cut short. Unlike Dad, whose jaw was ripped open, the bottom row of teeth so far down it was only attached by some fleshy strains. Worse than this fate was the expression imprinted into his face, the look of terror as he sat upright in his bed, the tears still streaming down his cheeks. And who stood atop of him, other than Lucy Lou, or whatever remained of her? Her skin was an icy blue. With her back now facing me, I could see the details of her veins pulsating down her spine. The once broken legs now bent the opposite way they were supposed to be. I could see her draw her long fingernails across Dad's neck, piercing the skin as long spiraling tongue unraveled to lick every drop of blood. It was then I saw those once beautiful eyes shining back at me. Her attention locked on me. No. No, no, no. I was meant to help. No, not again. I can't lose them. I can't lose her again. I made a promise. I meant to fix things this time. The way she moved was particular, her head tilting as if to decipher my reaction. Once off the bed, she began her approach. So focused on her, I lost my footing and fell backwards, landing on the ground and shuffling back in panic. Lucy, please. I debated running, but I was shaking so much. And where would I run to? Even if she didn't catch me, she was all I had left. I have to fix this. I have to fix this. I could see her hands crack and turn, the proportions morphing back into something more human. Yet despite the mutation reverting back, I knew her intent was the same. Lucy, it's me, Sammy. Please. Not sure what else to do. I searched through my pockets. I kept it on, all times, as a reminder, making sure even my pajamas had pockets so it never left my side. I tried my best to unfold the paper and present it, despite my hands shivering with every fearful breath. The only thing I had left to try, the only chance I had of survival, the drawing she made of us. Look, it's us, see? Pausing, she tilted her head. It's me, and Dad, and your mom. Please, Lucy, I don't know what's happening, but please. She continued to just stare at me, not moving. I promised I'd be better this time. I'm not abandoning you. I don't know why you... We can fix this, please. The grotesque form she had taken cracked and convulsed until it was back in its original state, that of the little girl I loved so dearly, all except those luminous, all-seeing eyes. You, she croaked out. I couldn't understand the expression she was making. It consisted of a scrunched nose and an intense stare. The eyebrows curled and pushed the folds of the skin together. The entire time, the eyes remained glued to me despite attempting to calculate something. It took a few steps towards me. I had nowhere behind me to retreat to. I just waited for my fate, still trying to understand that bizarre expression. Then, it stopped at my feet. You still think I am her? I felt my heart shatter as a feeling of disgust creeped up inside. Rage, devastation, and detachment came alongside it. Now, I understood that expression. Pity. I sat frozen in fear, even as it came closer. I guess you wouldn't know the difference, would you, if you never knew her? It leaned down in front of me. Its bones creaked as it crouched. With a gentle touch, it took my chin and raised it to face it. Looking straight into my eyes, I could see myself reflected in its pupils. If only you had kept an eye on her. Its nails slid under my eyelids, digging into my eyeball. Careful, it dislodged it from its place. I could feel the strain of my socket as it pulled against the force. I could feel the pain, but I did not process it. The further it was pulled out, the more the other eye could see it detach from the remaining red threads, until it snapped. It then took the eye and swallowed it whole, before leaving without another word, and I just sat there, staring at what remained of our family. I stayed in that state until the next morning, when the priest found me. I hadn't moved all night. I never spoke again after that. This is the only way I can communicate now. Fractured ramblings in text. as an attempt to right my scattered thoughts. I think the police were suspicious of me at first, but after the state they found me in, and the details the priest already knew about Lucy Liu, they dropped me as a suspect. I went to live with my grandparents. There was nowhere else for me to go, but even after all these years I can tell they don't know what to do with me. Lucy Liu was never found, or whatever that thing was. The police only resolved to find a body, not a person, presuming she met the same fate as my parents. They would never see a little girl as a serious culprit. They just presumed my parents asked the wrong people to help us out with the demon conspiracy theories. The story was they became convinced their traumatized daughter was possessed by a demon and started asking around those too willing to help out. And with me now, a recent mute, I couldn't defend their legacy. That is, until now. Not that anyone will believe this anyway. I'm not sure what to believe myself. It's clear to me now that my judgments were always wrong. Why did that thing keep me alive? Why do I not get to join my family? Why must I live with the guilt? What decided to give me the false hope I could ever get a second chance with Lucy Liu? Or maybe it thought it was being merciful somehow. What keeps me up at night is what happened to the real Lucy Liu. Did she get to pass on peacefully? Is she still in there somewhere trapped? Is she still suffering in that thing's place in whatever hellhole it came from? Even after all this time, I still have that picture in my pocket. The drawing it handed me in the hospital is in my hand as we speak. I know it is wrong. I know it means nothing. But no matter how I try, I can't let it go. I would have kept the real Lucy Liu's drawings, but I always threw them in the trash. Maybe that's why that thing kept me alive. The cruelty that fueled it was mirrored in me. Whatever happened, it is my fault. And even if my family could hear my hollow apologies, they mean nothing now. All I can do is mourn a sister I never knew.